Welcome to Strange Dimensions, the interface to alternate realities, contact experiences, and mysterious phenomena. And now your host for Strange Dimensions Radio, here's Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Strange Dimensions. And boy, we have a fantastic show tonight. One of my favorite topics, entity contact experiences, disclosure, and where humanity is going when it comes to contact with other dimensional beings. For the past few years, I've been talking about my concepts of trans-reality Earth. This is a reality in which humans have greatly expanded and even united consciousness, and we are engaging in frequent interaction with beings from other realities. I believe that we are already in the early stages of that expansion. Tonight's topic addresses this future that is already in the making. Joining me are two extraordinary individuals working in the field of entity contact, Miguel Mendonca, who lives in the UK, and Rob Gauthier of Michigan. Miguel has just published the third work in his trilogy about grassroots disclosure and contact, Being with the Beings, the How and Why of ET Contact, a collection of interviews with 9 individuals about their extensive contact experiences, the messages they receive, and the implications for humanity. I know that you're going to find this riveting and eye-opening tonight, and we're going to get straight into it. First, a little more about Miguel. He's an Anglo-Azorean author based in Bristol, England. And prior to his work in the ET and UFO field, he studied and worked in forestry and horticulture, gained an honors degree in geography and history, and then studied social science and environmental ethics at the postgraduate level. After he published a collection of short fiction in 2011, he began to research the ET field in depth. And in 2015, co-authored Meet the Hybrids with abduction researcher Barbara Lamb, which is a study of the lives of 8 ET human hybrids living on Earth. Very interesting work. In 2016, he published We Are the Disclosure, a 2-part work exploring the development of the UFO ET field over the past 70 years through interviews with 28 individuals. I am pleased to note that I wrote the foreword for Part 1. Now, for more information about Miguel, you can go to his website, wearethedisclosure.com, and also We Are the Disclosure SoundCloud and YouTube channels. With us also tonight is Rob Gauthier, one of the persons featured in Being with the Beings. He's a deep trance channel known internationally as the ET Whisperer. He has channeled hundreds of entities who are higher dimensional beings, including 2 main guides we'll be learning about tonight. His face-to-face contact began spontaneously a decade ago during deep meditation. We'll find out more about that too. Rob has co-authored 3 books with Jefferson Viscardi, Pleaidian and the Pleaidian Soul Reflection, also Extraterrestrial Life, Galactic Humans, and Benevolent Hybrid Reptilian Humans. He created the Enlightened Evolution Network, an internet radio network, co-created the Channel Panel, an annual online channeling and teaching event, and he offers private channeling sessions, which can be booked via his website, etwhisperer.com. He also has a YouTube channel, the official ET Whisperer channel. Gentlemen, Miguel and Rob, thank you for joining me tonight.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Well, Miguel, I'd like to start with you to get the genesis and overview of Being with the Beings, which I found very interesting reading because I myself have a lot of questions about how contact takes place and how messages are delivered and also the implications of those messages. And I'm also asked about this all the time from people who are having their own levels of contact. Now, you made the statement, the observation that years ago you became rather disenchanted with trying to drag the authorities screaming and kicking to the truth, and decided to go straight to the experiencers for the truth. And that's what launched this trilogy. And I was a little amused at how it all happened for you as a download experience. How did that take place?
Yeah, I mean, it actually happened while I was still finishing off the previous book. So I had just ordered the bound proof of We Are the Disclosure Part 2 and thought, great, I got 4 days till it ships from the States, so I can just chill out for a whole half week and just empty my mind and just try to recover a little bit. And so I stretched out on the couch, just emptied my mind. There was just nothing going on up there. And from one moment to the next, I would say this happened within 90 seconds. I got basically like this data readout in my mind's eye. It started with the title, Being with the Beings, and then the outline, a book about ET contact involving people who have had long, ongoing contact with the beings. Then the list of participants, the first 5, and then the list of questions. And the final question was, what message would they like to share? So it seemed obvious that somebody wanted to say something. So I thought, great, this is obviously going to happen. And I was interested, and I thought, well, wherever this has come from, they probably know better than me the utility of this book, what the experience will be for all concerned, what kind of service it will be for other people. So I just sat up, made the notes, and then I did an interview, I think, with Kevin Moore the day after that, who's a channel, and I ran this by him at the end of the interview and said, well, who else should be in this book? And he gave me a list of 3 or 4 names. Rob Gauthier was top of the list. The day after that, I caught up with Ruben Langdon, a filmmaker and interviewer of channels and beings through the channels. And I said, look, this has just come in, this next work order. And who would you suggest I get on? And he gave me the same list that Kevin had given me. So I thought, okay, well, this is simple. So I started contacting people, and everybody I contacted who were on those lists said, absolutely, I am in. That's how it started.
Definitely a book that was meant to be. And we're hearing more and more about downloads these days, people who are getting either massive amounts of information or great inspirations to do something, to take an action, write a book, create something. And there definitely is some new energy moving into consciousness. And I think this book is a good example of that. I was also pleased to see that you noted some of the data from the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and I'm on the board of that organization. When we issued the results of our groundbreaking global study of experiencers last year, it was astonishing to many people that about 70% of our respondents reported positive, benevolent experiences of the kinds that you are writing about. So clearly, you and Rob and the others in your book are at the frontier, at the forefront of a new wave of consciousness.
It feels like that. And the thing is that I think just about everybody can relate to this on some level. I've asked everybody I've ever interviewed, so that's best part of 40 people, and scores of other people in the field, about guidance, about to what extent have they felt guided in their work. And I asked that question to everybody at the end of We Are the Disclosure, and everybody said yes. Now, it wasn't necessarily, yeah, and I know my guides, and these are their names, and this is where they're from. Quite a few people have that relationship, but many people will say, well, not in that sense, but I sure have had a lot of synchronicities in my life. And this is, it's good practice to try to tune into it. And this is one of the things that the people in the book really get into in some depth, is trying to understand what are your thoughts, and what are perhaps thoughts that are coming from elsewhere. And so I put that question to everybody in this book. I think just about everybody, and most people said, well, it tends to be different. It tends to be almost a different tone of voice, or it just shows up. It sort of cuts across your train of thought, or it could be something that you have never really thought about before, and it just shows up. I mean, I've had this a couple of times since finishing the book. So by this point, I can kind of tell. I remember I was just thinking about some health issues that somebody was dealing with. And in the middle of it, like in capital letters, like in the middle of a sentence, there was these 4 words just dropped like granite into my mind. And it said, enlightenment is total acceptance. I shared that with a whole load of people in the next week, and everybody kind of took a moment and was kind of, And I have found continually since then different applications for it. Almost everything that comes up in life that is a difficulty, and some of that is connected to the consciousness shifts that have happened as a result of doing all of these books. And so this business of total acceptance, I've found, is almost a Swiss Army knife for dealing with human issues that come up here. And I'll share one other quasi download. I was having a series of dreams. I think I'd had a long conversation with Jacqueline Smith one night. Jacqueline, an ET human hybrid. She's in this book. She's in Meet the Hybrids. Good friend of mine. The night following that conversation, I just had the most incredible, vivid dreams of being sort of among the stars and seeing this incredible solar eclipse from down here, let's say. And then I was in the sort of southwestern United States flying and showing people that they could fly, and that as long as they understood that you have to know you can do it in order to do it. This was the message I was giving everybody. And then I woke up from this, and it was so vivid and powerful that I thought, great, I'm going to get this down in the journal. So I wrote up those notes, and then I just got this one line show up in my mind, something like, we are all more human than human, with feet of clay and wings of angels. And then basically this started pouring into my mind like dictation, and I was scribbling like crazy, trying to get these notes down as they came. And it was all in, it turned into this poem that was, I would say that I understand quite a bit of it and relate to quite a bit of it, but there was a real flavor in that it was, I would say, and certainly Rob, and I'm sure Aridif, one of his connections, would say this is classic co-creation. This was myself co-creating with something else, and this message I was just amazed by. And when I read it to people, I would always feel incredibly emotional by the end of it. It was something about kind of nailing the human experience, what it is to be down here going through all of this. And as I was saying, the consciousness shifts that have occurred through the experiences of the last couple of years have been so profound that I have actually come to find myself experiencing life in a, I would say, a radically different way, but it's kind of the way that I came in this life. I always saw myself as a visitor. I had no homeworld in mind, none of that. I didn't really have those concepts, but I felt like I was a stranger in a strange land, and I was here to try to observe the people here, try to understand it. And I think we discussed in previous interviews that things had been coming up related to that when I talked to people in this book. I interviewed 3 channels, and through them I interviewed the beings they're connected to. And I asked those beings about my guides, because that's something I wanted to open up personally for sure, but I wanted to give readers a kind of insight into the type of information that is available to any of us, anybody who wants to work with Rob or Lisa Royal Holt or Krista Racer, any of the people that are connected to this. There is an incredible amount of not only personal information, but a far bigger understanding of reality. It is all available through the guides, and I made my one of the objectives that I personally had with the book was to try to push the interviewees and myself and the beings to the absolute outer reaches of what I could even think to ask and gather from them, because I wanted this book to be something that would really satisfy me as much as possible in terms of all of the things that I've tried to understand since childhood. And of course, it's up to each reader to go on their own journey with it. They will all have unique experiences. Like, basically, there is no one book. There are as many versions of this book as there are readers of it. Each person will get something unique, and all the feedback has been unique.
Miguel, you've opened up some very interesting avenues for discussion here. So let's get Rob involved. And Rob, you did some channeling for Miguel, but I'd like the listeners to get acquainted with you a bit in terms of your own background, with how your experiences started and how they unfolded with the guides you've been working with.
Yeah, well, that's it's a pretty long story, and I've shared a lot of it publicly. But I'll give you the most condensed version that I can to try to make it make sense. I started out in my young 20s, actually in my teenage years, getting a lot of trouble, very disconnected, and that kind of slowed me down once I had my son at the age of 19, who has severe handicaps. He has cerebral palsy. He's 18 right now, and he doesn't walk, talk. He has to be fed, bathed, everything. He's completely dependent upon me for care. So that brought me back down to earth for a little bit. But seeing his conditions caused a lot of sadness and a lot of depression. So for quite a while, I went through a very bad issue with painkillers, and that turned into huge addiction, which took me down a very bad road. So I spiraled in depression, spiraled in drug use. After years of that, after I just got so tired, there was just something that motivated me to get out of that. And a lot of the people around me at that time in my life, and a lot of people, especially my child, kind of motivated me to get moving towards a better version of life. So I ended up quitting taking those drugs and pain medicine, and I eventually started doing meditation. And what led me to that was just this complete new version of life that was in front of me that I had not experienced before since I was a child. You know, when you look outside and you see the trees and the sky and the clouds, it's just so beautiful. And I hadn't touched that part of my own self since I was a child. So I really dug into that. I started meditation. I went to a spiritualism church, and the premise of the church is that they teach you can prove that God exists by connecting with people who pass on into the afterlife. And I was a bit skeptical when I first went there, but this was before I was on social media sharing things about my personal life with people. And this person who never met me knew a lot of things about my son that he had no way of knowing the first time I met him, and about some ancestors that I didn't even know about until I talked to my dad, who was the family genealogy guy. So when I told him what was told to me, he backed it up and showed me the parts of the family tree that were true in the reading that this guy gave me. So instantly I said, there's something here. And I was always a truth seeker of sorts. I enjoyed science when I went through school. I enjoyed anything that helped me understand the world around me better. I knew there were things that I couldn't explain. From childhood, I had a vision of my grandma, who had already passed before I was ever born, talking to me about my mother. And when I told my mother this at a young age, I think I was 7, 8, 9, my mom just said, yeah, that was a dream. She was shocked because I knew things that I probably shouldn't have known. But she said it was a dream, or maybe God gave me this dream to help me understand something, or her. Anyway, she basically said it's either that or imagination, and kind of blew it off. And there I was. And all these years later, I look back and I say, that experience, I don't understand. There's got to be more. So I did digging. They taught me how to meditate. They taught me how to try to receive messages. And there was a lot of things there that helped me. It really helped me kind of tune into my quiet mind and relaxation. After a while being at the church, I had to leave because there was a lot of dogma, which I think occurs in a lot of organized religions, not so much religion itself or spirituality, but the religion itself and the day-to-day goings of the church. So I backed out. I had dealt with Christianity my whole life. My parents were devout Christians, and it made me uncomfortable when things started getting weird at the church. So I did some investigating on my own. I was led to the Monroe Institute Gateway Experience, the HemiSync, and after utilizing that for a few months, it really increased my meditation, because my meditation had been at a plateau for months before that. After going through that experience, I had one night where I was pretty deeply disconnected. I had just this feeling that although the earth was beautiful and although it was wonderful, it was sort of a prison, you know. I felt like mankind shouldn't be stuck on Earth. They should be out in the stars and connecting with whatever's out there. So I go into my meditation, which is a very deep trance meditation that I had learned through the HemiSync and all the different types of meditation. And that's the night where I met my first guide, Treb. Treb is benevolent reptilian human hybrid, hence the name of the first book I did with Jefferson. And a lot of people had a lot of issues with that energy. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. After I met him, it was very weird. I thought I went crazy a little bit. It was so awkward and so different from what I've ever experienced. I had trouble wrapping my mind around it. And I'd been meditating every day for months and months. So finally, I stopped meditating after that because it scared me so bad, and for about a week. After that, I reconnected with Treb, and I talked to Treb, and I talked to him for 2 years through this meditation state, and there were always little things that gave me clues that what I was experiencing was real. For instance, someone had mentioned other channeled material, and I knew what channeling was, but I didn't hear it by that name until I heard about Jane Roberts, and I got that information through a very synchronistic way. And when I listened to some excerpts of the book, the same things that Treb told me, she was telling me, just at a different verbiage and a different expression. So after 2 years of connecting with Treb through that deep meditative state, I started channeling. I knew it was possible, so I worked with him until I was able to channel him verbally. I shared that information publicly for free, and shared as much of it as I could, because the information that he was teaching me and giving me changed my life completely. As much as I changed from leaving my drug abuse and depression to not doing that, I changed 5 times more once I started implementing what Treb was telling me about how reality worked, what my connection to him was. After a few years of channeling, I connected to my second guide, which is Aridif, and he is a Denebian ancient Pleaidian consciousness humanoid who has blue skin, purple hair, purple eyes, very different from the humans we perceive, but humanoid in form. And Aridif is kind of to Treb what Treb is to me. he's Treb's guide. So he's another step up in the consciousness evolution ladder. And ever since I've worked with him, that's when I've really broken open a lot of consciousnesses I've been able to connect to, the insight and ability to hone in that consciousness, and the connection process is really honed. And I've just been channeling ever since, sharing what I can. It's hard to say, because the experience itself is so different from what you normally experience. The human language, the English language, has no words to really jump into the experience, but it's truly been a gift, and that's been my road.
Now, you mentioned in Being with the Beings that Treb is really an aspect of your oversoul, or you're all part of the same oversoul, which sort of makes him your future self. Is that, am I getting the right take on that?
Yes, that's one possibility. And if you ask Treb or Aridif, they'll say, I'm a probable past version of themselves, hence they are a probable future. And it means that they are possibly one of the avenues I can take on my journey as a soul. And I really didn't even realize that until after I had been channeling Treb for well over a year, and Jefferson did the first book with me with Treb, where that was kind of displayed. And I had never even thought about that. And when I found that out, it made more sense why we were so easily connectable and why we were so resonant with one another.
Miguel and Rob, we are at the bottom of the hour, so we've got to pause now for a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Strange Dimensions on KGRAradio.com. We'll be right back with my enlightening guests, Miguel Mendonca and Rob Gauthier, tonight, talking about entity contact experiences. Don't go away. We're going to pick up with more interesting accounts and valuable information for you when we come back.
With Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. The Vibes Tribe seeks to assist you in creating and maintaining an uplifting and balanced state of being in your personal space. Palo Santo is a mystical tree that grows on the coast of South America. Palo is loved by many for its energetic, cleansing, and healing properties, and is also popularized for its heavenly presence in keeping your energy grounded and clear. Burning Palo provides an uplifting scent to raise your vibration and is also beneficial for relieving stress, anxiety, depression, and emotional pain. Palo Santo is also known for relieving symptoms of the common cold, headaches, and asthma. We offer Palo Santo in resin, powder, or by the stick. Go to onlinevibes.com for all of your vibration elevation needs and receive a free stick of Palo Santo with any online purchase over $25. Shop onlinevibes.com, that's onlinevibez.com, and get your vibes on today.
You read about UFOs, strange creatures, and ghosts. You watch videos about them. Do you know how to investigate them? Chase Kletsky does. For 20 years, she's been Indiana Jones and Laura Croft rolled into one. The real hunter of Bigfoot, ghosts, and UFOs. She goes everywhere, from remote woods to ghost-infested buildings to the highlands of South America, hunting down strange things in our world. Now she's written a book to show you how it's done. Co-authored with UFO researcher Richard Dolan, Chase lays it out. How to prepare, what to bring, interviewing witnesses, doing a stakeout, handling evidence, and documenting it the right way. Get Admissible, the field manual for investigating UFOs, paranormal activity, and strange creatures. Learn more at richarddolanpress.com.
Also available on Kindle.
Now you have the inside contact for alternative talk radio. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Strange Dimensions. My guests tonight, Miguel Mendonca and Rob Gauthier, both of them authors, researchers, and experiencers. Rob is a deep trance channel with hundreds of entity contact experiences, 2 important guides in his life, delivering some very profound messages. Miguel, an author and researcher in the entity contact and disclosure field, and an experiencer himself. The new book is Being with the Beings, The How and Why of ET Contact. Rob is in the book, along with 8 other contactees about their contact experiences. Websites for you to go for more information. We are thedisclosure.com. We are the Disclosure SoundCloud and YouTube channel. And the ET Whisper, etwhisperer.com, and the official ET Whisperer channel on YouTube. Right before the break, Rob, I just wanted to finish with you on this concept of your guide or guides, and perhaps this applies to all of us, really being our future selves, and that they are higher dimensional beings. And do we all have them?
Absolutely. This is something that every human, no matter how much they want to have guides, how much they don't, how connected they feel and don't, all of us have guides. And this is something, this is why I've channeled several hundred different entities. I don't connect with different entities for information. I trust Treb and Aridif's information because it resonates with me emotionally and logically. But many other people come to speak to their guides. So they'll ask, do I have any guides that want to speak? And Treb and Aridif will connect them through their own higher self communication with their guides. So there's never been one person who said, I want to talk to one of my guides, who hasn't been able to. And that's because we all have it. There's not a hierarchy, I don't like to use that word, but there's a setup in our souls, and the oversoul's the largest component. And that oversoul has hundreds of thousands of incarnations as humans. And then the human part's only the 3rd step out of 6 steps of the evolution of the soul. And this is why the word enlightenment always kind of is funny to me, because no matter what, we still have room to grow. We're still evolving until we leave the physical reality and become non-physical again. We're always going to be stepping up and growing. And in that growth, we have 3 levels above us, and all of those beings in that 4th through 6th level are higher dimensional beings. And out of those, there's tens of thousands of beings in your oversoul. The ones that resonate with the version of you that you are usually the ones that come forward or connect you the most easily.
Now, I'd like to pose some questions for both of you on this contact phenomenon, and how extensive is it? Is there like an undercurrent that isn't reported very often because people are just engaged in it privately? The kinds of things that are happening to the people you've interviewed, Miguel and Rob, in your own experiences, are they more common than we might believe? Miguel, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as I referred to earlier, it feels like on the level of guidance, and Rob's just talked about this, in the oversoul concept, in that kind of cosmology, there are so many aspects of the self that can interact with us and seem to in multiple ways. Jacqueline Smith describes in her chapter the integration process of all these different aspects of herself that come to her for different reasons. They come to her for experiences of this place, to understand something of this realm, to see through her eyes. And talking of eyes, she said that one aspect of her multidimensionality, if you want to term it that way, some people do, an aspect came to her, and that being was from somewhere with much lower levels of insulation, much lower light levels. And she said that in the integration process, she found she had to wear sunglasses all the time, and that she was really struggling with the brightness for that reason, I mean, there are so many levels to contact and the integration of these other aspects of the self that for a lot of people, I think that books like this, interviews like this, are going to be incredibly important to try to work through in some kind of structured manner the different layers and levels and mechanisms that all of these experiences and beings are experiencing and sharing. I mean, there is an enormous amount to it. People like Rob have almost specialized in understanding and describing for people a particular cosmological structure and understanding. And there are others. I mean, I have a real interest in how they connect with one another. In We Are the Disclosure, I interviewed Michael Cramo. He wrote Forbidden Archaeology, and we got into the reasons why he had sort of set out in this work, and it's because he's a disciple of Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. And in that, he has become a student of the ancient Sanskrit writings, which discuss a cosmology that has many parallels with the one that Rob and many other people describe, bringing through information from their guides and other aspects of themselves. In the Vedic cosmology that Michael shared with me, my read of that was that we start as pure consciousness. That's what we really are. And there are three realms, broadly speaking, in which that consciousness can reside. You have the realm of pure consciousness, then you have the realm of subtle matter, and then you have the realm of dense matter. And as a being of pure consciousness, you may become more self-regarding. And that self-regarding tendency or interest or process, we can almost think of it as having a kind of gravity, a kind of weight to it. And that the more that one involves oneself in the self, the more one will become sort of pulled down through those realms. So you'll find yourself in the realm of subtle matter. And if one continues to be self-regarding, one will find oneself in the realm of dense matter where we are now. And obviously that's a colossal area of study, and they both are, but it's just interesting to me to look at the different sources of information and look at how they map onto one another. But I think what both of these are telling us are that we can exist in many, many different forms. And if that is true, then and we factor in this sense of purpose, sense of process, then you can imagine that if you're in the realm of subtle matter, there would be an enormous amount to learn and to teach in the 3D realm. You would learn a lot from it. Perhaps you may find that as a more expansive, less ego-centered being, it's pretty interesting to meet humans, to experience a human incarnation even, because as Elisa Royal Holt describes, and Sasha, the Pleaidian being that she channels, describe in their chapter, if you're like an anchor that holds us in this process, and that is the ego. That is the thing that gives us the sense of self. Whereas the Sasha herself said that the Pleiadians in her time period are sort of moving through a process in which they are far less defined and identified with the personal separative ego, and they are more merged, if you like. So this kind of brings me back to the question of, is contact widespread? And you could say that it is endemic. It is how we live, but there are, if you like, limitations that are placed upon all of this, and our sense of self, our sense of being, our sense of reality through, if you like, the sort of post-Enlightenment, materialist sort of scientific cultural process that we've all undergone. I mean, we've basically in the West been told that there is only one real narrative, and that is science, and that is mathematics, and all the other stuff is just nonsense of various kinds. However, you could also say that in quantum mechanics, quantum physics, in theoretical physics, those conversations with the conversations that we're having on this program, and certainly Rob and Aridif could have, they are not so different. Those worlds of science and, if you want to call it spirituality or consciousness studies, they are literally merged. And I think we're piece by piece, slowly coming to a sort of merging of those. And I think that as we hear almost daily, certainly this year, we've heard a lot about other life in this solar system, on some of the moons of some of our planets. And I think that this is also helping to sort of soften that sort of resistance that has built up to the idea that there could be any other form of life other than human.
Rob, I'd like to ask you about your contact experiences. When you ask the beings why they are engaging with you, what's their answer?
Well, the reason to start that connection process, Treb told me it wasn't him that reached out to me. It was me that reached out to him. And I think there's an idea in the metaphysical spiritual community that says, I have to be worthy of contact. I have to be worthy of connection. But it's not true. Connection doesn't happen when you reach out into the cosmos trying to grab something. It happens when you reach inside of yourself and connect first. It's an internal quest, because if everything Treb and Aridif have ever shared have been true, that means the entire universe is at your beck and call within you. It's not something that people have to go outside of themselves to see. The best way for anyone to gain access to contact is by going in themselves. That's why people who use meditation are usually the people who have the highest capacity to reach out to spirit or to reach out to contact. You look at Stephen Greer and the CE5 techniques that he teaches. He's having crafts of light or physical spaceships coming into their reality to interact with them at all times, doing this from a group of people who have the same interest and excitement and follow that. One of the biggest things that Treb and Aridif ever shared, follow your excitement, and that's what will lead you to your path. And most people believe that it has to be something that they learn or study or do. They have to eat vegan food and meditate 20 hours a day. That's not the case. The case is when you reach inside of yourself and you are truly moved to do something, that's where contact begins for everyone.
I'm glad you mentioned that about meditation, because I've talked about the importance of that for years. No matter where you are in the paranormal or ufology contact, meditation is one of the fundamentals to expansion of consciousness and being receptive to all kinds of contact experiences. So thank you for reinforcing that. You mentioned, Rob, that these beings are higher dimensional beings, and contact with them requires a change in vibrational frequency. Either they've got to match ours or we've got to lift up to their level. So how do we change our vibrational frequency to enhance contact?
Well, it kind of goes along the line with what I was saying earlier, that excitement. Excitement is a motivation within your soul to move forward, to do something. And a lot of us think that when we live life day to day, we have to do this and we have to go to work and we have to pay our bills. And all of these things get in the way of people's excitement. So when they're going forward, they kind of say, well, I have to do my human responsibilities before that. So when it really gets down to it, to raise your vibration, you have to be yourself. And even those people who say, well, my uncle's a crab, he always yells and screams and gets drunk, he's being himself and he can't get into contact. Well, he's being a self that he taught himself to be through being resistant his whole life. The lack of resistance is truly an inability not to act on your excitement. So when you get down to it, that excitement, that pathway opens it up. And raising vibration for me happens through meditation, because it allows me to be in a place that I normally couldn't be without it. But as important as meditation is to me, some people find it in doing art. Some people find it in doing music. As important as meditation was for me to gain contact, there are people I'm familiar with and personally know so many channelers throughout the world right now, and a lot of them gained access to it through inquiry and investigations, because they believed their excitement was to know more stuff, and they followed that, and by following it, they gained that access. So raising your vibration just means to not be in an unalignment with yourself. Always stay in alignment, and that happens when you follow your excitement and act on it immediately.
Is there a big overall message to a wide range of contact experiences? What are the entities telling us, Miguel?
I think one of the things that I hear over and over again is that people need to kind of get in touch with who they are, really listen to and understand what they're about, what they want, what they don't want, how to tune into their own intuition, how to be their own guide. As Rob was saying, a lot of this, it's like by the end of being with the beings, I was talking to magazines and websites about doing articles, and I discovered I could not find the words to express what was happening because of all of these contact experiences. I think that it became so much more a internal, personal process that it was very difficult to find the words for it, especially when I was experiencing that kind of dissolution of the ego and finding myself just for about 2 weeks straight it's like my ego virtually vanished, and I was just in this kind of flow with everything. I mean, I was spending a lot of time making music, and this is a great place to go inside to quiet the mind. It's my meditation. Cycling when I'm out on the bike, that's a meditation. And I've had all kinds of interesting messages and experiences while out cycling. And there are many, many people, from scientists and engineers, people working in medicine, musicians, artists, who said that their inspiration has come from elsewhere. Tesla has a much quoted statement on this, that there is this intelligence out there that is kind of almost always, if you like, broadcasting, and it's a matter of whether or not you're tuned in. And I mean, Rob talked about other aspects of the self. I mean, I think that people like Rob get a lot of very clear information on this, but because I've spoken to so many people and had so many different narratives, in a sense, it's kind of difficult to reconcile some of those. And in a way, I feel like the intellectual part of this journey is done for me. Like getting out these sort of 4 books in 2 years, I feel like that external intellectual process is done. And now it's really about being in the experience. And I think that this is, to loop back to the question, this is what I think is coming through over and over again, that this is fundamentally about experience. So I was having this conversation this week with a friend that there's a lot of people that go through a phase of trying to deny their humanity, trying to leave it all behind and just say, well, humans are stupid, they're just this or they're just that, and I'm really an ET and I'm from that planet and I can't wait to go home. And I mean, I make no judgments about where people are at or what their particular trip is, but for me, and I think for a lot of people, you go through that phase and you realize, well, I incarnated here for a reason. This is what all of this stuff is telling me. I came here for a reason. So again, what is that reason? How do I know what to do? Goes right back to what Aridif has said. It's about following your excitement. It's about getting tuned in to who you are and how you are and what you want. And the support for that, as we've discussed in this subject, in this interview, is absolutely everywhere, not only from your own guides and your own intuition, but from the community. There is an enormous community of people who are coming together more and more, facilitated by people like yourself, the people who are creating the shows. People like myself and Rob can come on. We can funnel in an enormous amount of information to a huge amount of people who can feel that they're not alone in this, that this is a human phenomenon. It's not geographically located. It's not located in time. This is part of the matrix of reality, and it's available to everybody.
Rob, what do you see as the dominant message or messages that the beings are communicating to people now?
I think Miguel touched on a ton of important stuff. I also think that as far as my guides and many of the other channelers and many of the other contactees and co-creators that I've met, it all boils down to understanding your own power. We are creators. We came here because we wanted to come here. We incarnate as a human for a specific reason, a desire of the soul. And in all reality, our soul, our non-physical essence, desires experience above and beyond all things. So any experience is good as long as you're able to perceive that. Perception is definitely the mother of all experiences, because we paint the world with the same brush that we perceive from. And when we go through and create our reality, we have to realize that even the bad things that happen for us don't have to be bad. If we take something and we learn from that adversity and overcome it, then we have actually given ourselves a valuable tool. So I guess the one major rift throughout all of them is that you create your own reality and you can experience anything that you desire as long as you're in alignment with that. I hate to keep going back to that excitement thing, but look how everything's transpired. Miguel was excited to share a message. He got the inspiration, the download, contacted me. I was excited to co-create and share that, and you were excited to have us on today. So we're creating this huge ripple of energy from all of us being excited and not allowing ourselves to sabotage that excitement and act upon it. Excitement is the huge place that we all step forward from when we want to go on that journey we were meant to go on.
One of the messages that came through in the free survey, when we asked people what the purpose of contact was, and a lot of respondents said love, that they felt that that was the purpose of having contact. And that was a transcendent experience for them, transformational for so many people. And almost instantly consciousness expanding in and of itself. Well, we're coming up on the final minutes of our show here, and I just want to pose one more question for either or both of you. Those people who are waking up right now to this new reality and to contact, what should they do?
Be patient with yourself. Trust yourself. Don't think that you have to do anything. Allow yourself to be you. And just remember, when you're going through that experience, be easy, trust yourself, and follow that excitement. Everything will be perfect. Promise.
Miguel, closing thoughts?
I just want to come back to the community question. I mean, myself and a group of people that have been convened by Rebecca Hardcastle Wright are in the process of helping to sort of foster the global community of experiences. And I think that this is one of the most important aspects of this whole subject, that you are never alone in this. There are so many of us who you can connect to for sharing, for support. And yeah, it comes back to that words that came up in the survey. It really is about love. This whole thing, it's like when I met Rob, it was like I'd met a brother immediately. And I have had that numerous times in this field. So it doesn't have to be something that people fear. The more you dive into it, the more you come to understand why so many people had stated in the free survey that their experience was positive, somewhat or overwhelmingly so.
Excellent closing thoughts for the show tonight. Gentlemen, Miguel Mendonca and Rob Gauthier, I'd like to thank you for being with me on Strange Dimensions, KGRAradio.com. The book, ladies and gentlemen, Being with the Beings, The How and Why of ET Contact by Miguel Mendonca. Rob Gauthier is in the book with a fabulous chapter, forward by Arleo Sprinkle. You can pick it up online. Do visit wearethedisclosure.com, and we have a Disclosure SoundCloud and YouTube channels. Rob's website, etwhisperer.com, and on YouTube, the official ET Whisperer channel. I'm going to have you both gentlemen back on a future show because there's so much more to talk about. You've been listening to Strange Dimensions, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned now, because in just a few minutes, Jimmy Church is going to be up with Fade to Black. See you on down that paranormal road. Good night, everyone.